So our speaker today is Tammy Middleton. She's here from ICRIP, who is our risk management company, and she'll be doing training on respectful workplace. Tammy comes to us with a great deal of experience, and so we appreciate her coming over from Boise to be with us today and doing this presentation. So Tammy, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you. So welcome. Thank you for coming to training today. I want to warn you in advance that there will be an interactive part of this training. So be prepared to answer questions. So this is a little bit about me, just kind of my background, various degrees that I hold related to HR, types of industries I've worked in, and places where I have provided services. So we'll get started with respectful workplace. So this used to be called harassment training. Now we call it respectful workplace because the concept has changed from what not to do to how to have a respectful work environment for everyone. So every employee in your organization is entitled to a workplace that is free of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. That means you, your coworkers, your bosses, everybody should get to come to work and not have to worry about these types of issues. And the reason that we talk about them a lot is because these lead to litigation. Okay, so that's it. Laws you need to know. So these are some of, this is not an inclusive list, but these are the major laws that apply to harassment, discrimination, and retaliation in the workplace. I strongly encourage you to look these up when you have an opportunity. It's your responsibility to know what the laws are, so it's always good to look at them firsthand. The organizations that are responsible for enforcing these laws are the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and the Idaho Human Rights Commission, and of course, court. So, typically what happens with a complaint, if it's sent to the EEOC, is that they'll look at it, they will decide if it's something that bears more investigation, and then they typically, not always, but they typically turn it over to the Idaho Human Rights Commission for an investigation and determination. And then, of course, there's the complaint side, which people make complaints, they file lawsuits, and then that's determined in court. So these laws apply to protected class. So what protected class is are these categories. So race, gender, religion, disability, sexual orientation, new gender identity, age, pregnancy, and protected activity. So most of these, I'm sure you know what they are, but protected activity is something I want to focus on just for a second. Protected activity means that anytime someone engages in a protected activity, then they are also have protections. So they don't have to be about their race or gender or something of that sort. Protected activities are things like reporting crimes, reporting harassment, union activity, those types of things. So if a person comes in and they report fraud in your organization and then they get fired, that would be retaliation. They're protected. Make sense? So, discrimination. The definition of discrimination for our purposes is treating an applicant, employee, patron, member of the public differently than someone else because of a protected characteristic. Okay? So those types of things apply when the particular, whatever it is that happens is because of their protected characteristics. So let me give you an example of that. If I don't hire you because you are female, that would fall into that category. If I don't give you the job because your first language is not English, falls into this category. Retaliation. The retaliation laws generally are grouped under whistleblower, and whistleblower is its own law as well. So retaliation occurs when an employer takes any type of adverse action against an employee engaging in a protected activity. Does anybody have an idea what an adverse action is? No? So like I fire you. That would be adverse, right? Maybe I move you to that back cruddy office in the very, very back with no windows. You have to climb over the desk to get in there. An adverse action could be laying someone off. It could be not promoting them. It could be not giving them an interview. And then harassment. Harassment is any conduct or action based on a protected personal characteristic that is severe or pervasive, enough to create a hostile, abusive, or intimidating work environment. It can be sexual harassment and it can be non-sexual harassment. So severe and pervasive is the legal bar. So if the behavior is severe and pervasive, then it would fall into the category of illegal harassment. Does that make sense? So if somebody asks you on a date once, it's probably not severe or pervasive. If they ask you out 52 times in 32 days, severe and pervasive. Make sense? So why do we do this training? Why do you have to come here? Why do you have to participate? Why do you have to listen to this? Why do we go on and on about it? Because 77% of women surveyed reported having experienced unwanted sexual attention or sexual comments in the workplace. That is pervasive. That means of the 10 women you know, nearly 8 of them have experienced this in their work environment. That's severe. 34% of men have experienced the same. Let me give you an example. Organization I work for. We have previously, not my current organization, but previously we had a group of engineers up on the 2nd floor. As you probably know, the majority of engineers, especially in construction, which this was, were men. So we had an intern in the engineering group, a design engineer, intern. And he was up there with an entire group of men. The day that he left the organization, so he went back to school, I interviewed him on an exit interview. How did your internship go? What did you like about it? What did you learn? You know what he told me he learned? To wear his headset all the time so that he didn't have to listen to the locker room talk from the other engineers and the jokes about women and all sorts of sexual content. And I was devastated to hear that. I was devastated that that had happened. And that's something that we ended up having to address because no one should have to come to work and wear a headset all the time to not hear that type of conversation. 90% of employees who experience harassment never file a complaint. That's my intern with the headphones. Never filed a complaint. Any guesses why he didn't file a complaint?
It affected job.
Absolutely. It would affect his job. He was concerned about his internship. He wanted to be invited back. It was an important internship for his career. What else? He already didn't like the toxic environment he was in, and he certainly did not want to make himself a target by complaining about it. He put his earplugs in, put his head down, did his job, and got out of there. And that is a sad statement about that organization. So 90% of employees don't report it because they're afraid. They're afraid of retaliation. They're afraid of being labeled. 75% of employees who report harassment experience some type of retaliation. That is severe. That is pervasive in your environment. So it's up to your leadership team and yourselves to create an environment where these numbers are not the way it works. So let's talk about victims. Victims of harassment, retaliation, discrimination in the workplace. 32% of persons subject to those things experience clinical anxiety and depression. That negatively impacts their ability to work, their ability to function, and their ability to engage with their families. 22% change their regular routine. They start skipping meetings to avoid harassment. They don't want to go out to the supply area because they don't want to be harassed. That is not the type of environment we want people in, right? We want everybody to be able to fully engage and participate in their jobs. 15% into romantic relationship. So that is like a lifetime partnership, a marriage ends because one of them is being harassed at work, and it can negatively impact their relationships. And 9% change of job. Why is that important? It's important because when we have people in our organization that we run out of the business because of the culture that they're subjected to, we have to replace them. Does anybody know how much it costs to hire a person on average? So include in your number, you gotta advertise, you gotta take time for one of the supervisors to write a job description, get that approved. And you gotta publish that position, you gotta interview people, you gotta sort through applications, you gotta hire someone, you gotta train someone, and then you gotta get them up to speed before they're fully functioning. Any ideas? The average cost for a hire is $25,000 every time you have to hire somebody. It's extensive. And if they work in a specialized industry like fire department, police department, where they have to have a bunch of additional training, every time someone leaves, it costs your organization a lot more money. Has less money for everything else. Supplies, chairs, computers, those sorts of things. So, high harassment risk areas. These are areas in your organization that it's important to pay attention to because they are more likely to have incidents of harassment. So, what we know from 1964 forward is that women are more likely to be harassed than men. It's just the way it is. Opposite gender dominated jobs. So, for example, a male nurse is far more likely to be harassed than a female nurse. Right? For a multitude of reasons. They're also one of the largest groups to be asked on dates by patients. A lot of times people in this kind of, men who work as nurses get a lot of, so I have a daughter who's single, and they get a lot of that day in and day out, and it's not right. They shouldn't have to put up with that. And then people who work in isolated positions. So if you have a person who's working off by themselves and they tend to be isolated, they're working in the office where they're in the back corner of a warehouse, harassment tends to happen in environments where no one's looking. So that's just something to be aware of. If you are a person who's working in an isolated situation, then you should have, your supervisor should be periodically coming and maybe dropping by every once in a while just to make sure everything's okay. Okay, so let's talk about harassment. There are two categories that unlawful harassment falls into. Quid pro quo and hostile work environment. Quid pro quo means this for that. If you do me a favor, I will give you that. So, that typically is, if you go on a date with me, maybe you'll get the better office, or you'll get the new computer, or you'll get to drive the new truck, or you'll get to go to a conference. So anytime this for that happens. And these are typically in positions of power. So it's a supervisor, manager, somebody in leadership that has the power to exchange this for that. And then hostile work environment. And this is just, I call it Pandora's box. Everything falls under this. Things you hopefully have not even imagined. Hostile work environment exists when an employee's behavior creates an environment at work that makes it difficult or uncomfortable for another person to work. That is as broad as you can get. Difficult or uncomfortable. So, the types of disrespectful behavior in broad categories. Psychological, bullying, physical, verbal, written, and cyberbullying. Can anybody think of an example of psychological? No? So, how about if I hold a meeting and I invite all of you there, and I let all of you guys go around the table and give me your opinion, except for you. I skip you. That's psychological, right? Because it's like everybody's important except you. That type of thing can happen. If who are doing like bullying, if you see those types of things, what does that look like in your work environment? What did it look like in high school? Do you remember? People being bullied in high school, right? Ostracizing, name calling, harassing, gossiping, those types of things. And then there's physical, obviously, that's pushing and shoving. Have you ever seen like somebody walk down the hall and somebody will shoulder them just a little bit when they go by? That's a message, right? It's a disrespectful message, and we all know what it means. And we know what it means when we see it. We know what it means when it happens to us. Verbal, obviously, anything that we say. Written, anything in writing, pretty easy to understand, right? Email, on paper, all those types of things. And then there's cyberbullying. And cyberbullying is a tough one because in work environments, because I think that we think that things that happen outside of work don't apply to work. So if I don't like you and I have something to say about you, and I post it on Facebook, off work hours, off the clock, I can't get in trouble for it, right? Wrong. You absolutely can get in trouble for it. And it is absolutely the responsibility of your organization to address those things. Because if you do something outside of work and it impacts a person's ability to do their job, then it's all fair game. So, something to be aware of. Okay, so I'm going to give you a not all-inclusive list of things that can happen that could be considered or looked at for a hostile work environment. Excluding, ignoring, isolating, and ostracizing. So I'm going to have a meeting, we're going to discuss the new policy on parking, and I don't invite you, so you don't get to have a say. Okay? Or make you work it clear out. I'm going to put your office out at the solid waste area, so you can't participate on anything that's going on in the office. Opposing or challenging everything the victim says. So this can happen like in maybe meeting structures, when everybody gets together, talking about ideas, and every time a person brings up an idea, they're shot down. They're attacked by somebody else. That's stupid. You just don't understand. Well, it's always worked before, so we don't need to change that. That type of thing. Every time that happens, doesn't mean it's harassment, but these types of things can create that type of environment. Okay, slurs, insults, degrading comments, disgust, and mocking. So a couple of things. These tend to be around race and religion, these types of comments. So I'll give you an example. Disgust. The first time I saw this list, I was like, disgust. So I worked for T-Mobile for years, and it's a huge food environment. We eat for absolutely everything. You gain 20 pounds when you start T-Mobile. It's the T-Mobile 20. Every Friday there's a potluck. Someone's having a potluck. Okay. So I had a group of folks on one team that ate fish on Fridays. Okay. So they have fish on Fridays. They bring fish for the potluck. I have an employee in the next group come over every week and complain. The fish stinks, it's disgusting, it makes me gag, we shouldn't allow people to have fish in here, blah, blah, blah. Is that a problem? Absolutely. Because some people eat fish on Fridays for religious reasons. So you have to be aware of those things. So slurs and insults, we all know what slurs are. The new trends we see is people coming up with new names for bad behavior. So let me give you an example. How many of you guys know what a Karen is? Right? We know what a Karen is. Is it bad to call someone a Karen? Oh, but it's a code word, right? It means something else. What does it mean?
Slotty woman.
Right? Somebody's going to go complain to the manager, is going to get in your face, tell you how to do what you're supposed to be doing, that sort of a person. So anytime you have these types of behaviors and even code words, we all know what they mean. We know what we're trying to say. Can be held against you. Intolerance towards holidays, traditions, pressure to convert, right? Excluding from consideration due to FMLA, ADA, or sick leave. So, using FMLA, using your allotted sick leave, using an ADA accommodation are what? Protected. They're protected activities, okay? So these are protected activities. So if a job, say a promotion or a job opening happens, and I'm looking at people, and I'm like, well, you know, this person is taking an awful lot of FMLA, and this job really requires good attendance, so I'm not going to consider that person. Is it lawful to do that? Absolutely not. Okay. Teasing, unfairly criticizing, belittling, trivializing, discrediting. Physical stuff, tripping, cursing, hitting, shoving, kicking, and hand gestures. We all know what those are, right? So all of these are up for grabs. And destroying property to intimidate. I don't have a lot of good examples for this. The only one I've seen is people break pencils. Like stand behind somebody and go, snap. You know what I mean? What they're trying to say. It's childish, but it's still. Okay, so let's talk about some behaviors that are specific to harassment, things that I look for, things that your attorney will look for, your HR department when we're discussing harassment situations. Sharing sexual content. So that can be showing somebody a picture on your cell phone, that can be hanging up an inappropriate calendar, emailing jokes, emailing slurs, emailing pictures, all falls into this category. Obviously, comments, jokes, questions. Touching, gestures, and invading personal space. So, standing too close, sitting on someone's desk, putting your foot up on the table in their personal space, you get the idea, right? All those things can be considered intimidating and are types of harassment. Sharing humiliating things about the victim on social media. This most likely happens during a breakup. My advice to everyone is the same. As much as that person is into you when you're dating, is how much they will not be when you're not. That's why work relationships should be discouraged. I know you're with people that you work with a lot, and so it's really easy to maybe want to go on dates with them, but this is where the lawsuits happen. This is where you think what you said in private won't be, but then they're mad, and so they're going to blast you on Facebook or whatever. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, those sorts of things. And what I will tell you is, this is where we've had the defendant cases. This stuff has happened. So I've had situations where we had two people dating, and one of them worked for the police department, was a parole officer, broke up with the gal, and then later had to arrest her. Guess what picture she wanted to show everybody to negotiate her arrest? Pictures that were shared before, not saying it can't be defended, not saying that it's a crime, I'm just saying please don't put your organization in that spotlight, because the public will try you regardless. And of course, spreading lies and gossip about the victim on social media. This happens a lot with breakups too. This also happens with promotions, where we go onto Facebook to say how we felt about the situation. And then, of course, the classic stuff, sending harassing messages, memes, and directly to the victim and harassing them. And, wait, there's more. So, let's talk about retaliation and discrimination behaviors. These are a little bit more clear. So, firing. Somebody reports that their department, somebody in their department is defrauding, stealing money, that sort of thing. Then they get fired. Laid off. We saw some of this. has happened recently with COVID and a lot of people being laid off as organizations downsize. Anybody they've ever had a problem with, it was like, woohoo! Shake the ticks off your back, let's lay them all off. Not good. Definitely what I would call a yellow flag. So something you want to watch for and make sure you're aware of all the conditions. Demoting, denying, promotion, disciplining. Reassigning to a less desirable position. So, you're going to be a Tammy Tattletale, you can work over there by yourself. We're restructuring. You're working over there. Reducing pay or hours. Your position is no longer available. We have this position now that's 20 hours a week and pays half what you were making. Falsely accusing the employee of poor performance. This one we see litigation around a lot too. And what will happen, a typical scenario would be somebody tells about something, whistle blows, right? They go and report something, illegal activity going on, and suddenly their performance, which historically, and this is a big part of it, is that historically their performance, they were, scored 5s across the board, no disciplinary action. Then they whistle blow, and then their next performance review, they're inadequate, unskilled, scored a 1, and headed out the door. So recency, right? So they whistle blow and then this happens. That looks like retaliation, even if that employee suddenly became the worst employee you had for real. This will look like retaliation. Blacklisting. So we're not going to fire you, we're going to keep you around, but you're never getting promoted and you're not getting another raise. Enjoy your career. That stuff happens. And constructive discharge. Constructive discharge is when I make your job and your work life so miserable that you have no choice but to quit. Because sometimes we think that if you quit, we're off the hook. We didn't fire you, you quit on your own, right? So you're not going to get unemployment. Although, oh yeah, you will. This really does happen. And if it can be proved that the work environment was made undesirable for that person, they were forced to quit, then you are on the hook. Okay, so let's talk, that's harassment, discrimination, retaliation, kind of in a small dose. So let's talk about how to prevent it. So who do these laws apply to? Employees, right? Do they apply to your supervisors? Of course. Do they apply to the public? Absolutely. Do they apply to vendors and suppliers that come into your organization? Of course they do. So you cannot harass those people and they cannot harass you. All right, so as an employee in your organization, these are your responsibilities. You're responsible to follow your agency's policies. If you don't know your policies, you should read them. Get your, talk to your HR department if you don't have a copy of your employee manual, employee handbook, personnel policy, whatever that is. Get a hold of it and make sure every couple of years at the minimum that you read the policies on this because things change. Treat others with respect. Pretty simple. Just you come to work and you work and do your job and focus on the work. And you let your coworkers come to work and do the job and focus on the work. And leave the slurs and the jokes and the dating requests out of it. And then equip yourself to respond to inappropriate situations. A lot of this stuff goes on because we just don't know what to do when it happens. You're standing there doing your job, being a regular person, working away, and someone comes up and smacks you on the behind. I can't believe that just happened to me. Like, what is going on, right? And so in that moment, we don't always respond well. So it's really important that you know how to respond and you practice, which is what we're going to do today. So first I want to kind of explain the different rules. There will be no slapping on the behind in this class today. Okay, so the first is the rules of harassment, and there are 3. The first is the target. So you're the person who's being harassed. Number 1, don't ignore it. If you felt uncomfortable, it's probably inappropriate. Go tell your supervisor what happened. Report it. Because they cannot address, they cannot fix things that they don't know about. And people who are bad actors in your organization who do this stuff on purpose, they're smart enough not to do it in front of your supervisor. So a lot of this stuff can be hidden from your leadership team. So you need to report it, and definitely don't ignore it. I promise it will not go away. Tell the person to stop. This is super hard. We all feel uncomfortable. It's probably at least as uncomfortable as asking someone on a date, right? Is to tell someone to stop. So I encourage you to practice what you would say if somebody asks you on a date. You don't want to flip out and be like, no! You know, like just, no thank you. I don't date people I work with. That's my policy. No thank you. Let's move on, okay? If you're not comfortable telling the person to stop, whatever that is, talk to your supervisor or go talk to your HR person or your leadership team. They are versed in these. They've told people to stop a million times. They will help you. They will help you with the word choices, or they'll tell them to stop on your behalf. But they can't do any of those things if you don't tell them. So report it, report it, report it. Even if the behavior does not rise to the level of pervasive or severe, they still need to know about it. Because if it happened to you, chances are it's happened to someone else in your organization, and they need to know what the trends are. They need to understand if there's a pattern of behavior. So for example, you may have an employee who really likes to go around and do something inappropriate. I'll give you an example. At T-Mobile, I had a female employee who worked for me, and she had a skill set, which was taking the lid off of the soda bottle, putting it in her mouth, and blowing it into your cleavage. Like a target, okay? That happens once you think it's an accident, you're like, oh my gosh, you know. But then when you talk to HR, you find out that this same employee has been doing the same offensive behavior for 2 years to multiple different people. That's a problem. If you don't report it, they can't take action. That needs to stop, okay? You have to give your leadership team the tools that they need in order to make your work environment better. So you have to report it. Don't quit. If you run from a situation at your work, the next person who takes your job is probably going to be subjected to it too. So really what you're doing is creating a situation for someone else to be harassed. So you have a responsibility to your organization. You accepted a position with this company, with this agency, and you have a responsibility to help them be a good agency. So you need to report it and don't run. Document, document, document. I guarantee you that if you don't report it and you don't write down who, what, when, where, who witnessed it, what was the situation, you will forget the details. And then it becomes a he said, she said, she said, she said, he said situation. Your word against theirs. And that puts your employer in a difficult position because they can't take one employee's word over another employee's word. But if they have a history and they've had other complaints, they may have some more information to work with. Okay, so it's not all about the target. Let's talk about the accused. What do you do if you're accused of harassment or retaliation in your work environment? First off, stop when asked. Pretty simple. If someone says, that makes me uncomfortable, please don't sit on my desk, get off the desk. Easy, right? Just stop. Take it seriously. Don't get up off the desk like, oh, geez, you're so sensitive. Oh, you know, what a baby. I was just sitting there talking. Geez, I was working outside. I was tired. I sat for a minute. Don't do that. Just take it seriously. Stop when you're asked. Apologize. This is the biggest one that we miss. And this spurs litigation because you didn't say I'm sorry, so I think you did it on purpose and no one cares, so now I'm going to really go for it. Apologizing to someone for a misunderstanding, and I'm assuming positive there was a misunderstanding. Apologizing does not mean you're admitting guilt, okay? You're not saying, I'm sorry I harassed you. You're saying, I'm sorry I made you uncomfortable. And don't do it again. Because we don't always have bad intentions. Sometimes we just live a certain lifestyle, we're comfortable in a certain space, and we don't always realize that other people are not the same as us. They're not comfortable in the same spaces that we are. And so, I'm sorry, get off the desk. Don't get on the desk again. It's easy. A lot of times that will stop it. That'll be the end of it. Don't retaliate. So again, somebody asks you to do that, don't stand up and be like, oh, you're being sensitive, you're such a Debbie Downer, oh, you're little, Tommy Tattletale about everything. I didn't mean anything by it, it's just jokes. Now I'm going to go around the office and ask everybody else if they've had a bad interaction. Have you ever sat on Tammy's desk? Did she act like that to you? She act like that to me. Next person. Have you ever sat on her desk and had her act a certain way? Does she, and it just escalates, and now we have a hostile environment with a whole bunch of people involved. So, don't retaliate. Just walk away, it's okay. You didn't mean to. Trust in your own positive intention. Let it go. Tell your side. Don't blame the victim. Don't get on somebody for reporting something. Chances are they genuinely were uncomfortable. Tell your side. Yes, I came in there. I was tired. It was hot. I didn't think anything about it. I sat on the desk. They told me not to. I got up. I said I was sorry. Tell your side of the story. Don't run from it, don't hide it, don't be combative. Just tell your side. We do want to hear your side, and we don't assume that you're guilty. Okay, let's talk about bystander. This is the third role in a harassment situation, or bystanders. So a lot of times harassment takes place in dark corners and we don't see it, but a lot of times people are there, bystanders, right? Other people in the meeting, other people standing around when the jokes are being told. Did you know that if you are a non-participant, you are not the target and you are not the accused, you are the bystander, that you still could make a potential harassment complaint? No? So this is how it happens. My boss comes in to me and is like, hey, you want to go have a drink after work? And I'm like, sure, I'll go have a drink with you. And then 2 weeks later, I get promoted. My coworker, who 2 weeks earlier told the boss, no, I don't want to have a drink, I don't drink, did not get the promotion. What does that look like? Favoritism for one, right? Quid pro quo. Could be this for that. And that person can make a claim saying, because I didn't have a drink with the boss, I didn't get the promotion. And that could potentially be a claim. So be aware of that in your environment. The biggest thing with bystanders is bystanders have a huge opportunity to disrupt harassment in their work environment. And it's really important that they take action, that you as a bystander take action. So if you see these things going on, do something about it. We'll talk about what. The reason being is that when you are in the environment, if you don't say anything, are you really not saying anything? What you're really saying is, I see that, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with my Latino employee always getting chewed out and blamed for everything. I don't want to be the target, so I'm not going to say anything. That makes you a participant in the situation, and you can be held responsible for that. Scary, right? So for bystanders, pay attention. Be aware of your environment. Have any of you guys ever worked with somebody who's a bad actor? Like, they just scream, yell at somebody all the time, or they're always asking people on dates. Has anybody ever had somebody like that in their entire history? Ever? If you haven't, you're very lucky. But typically when you have a bad actor, everybody knows it, right? People know who to avoid. People have been warned. So just pay attention to your environment. Distract. If you see a situation happening, it's really easy to just walk up and distract from it. So if I see Kyle sitting on Cindy's desk for the 15th, how do I distract from that? Just walk up and ask a question. Hey, can you help me with this? Or do you know where this is? Or can you show me where the fire extinguisher is? Or anything to just break that up. If we all do that and we all participate that way, these things don't get out of hand. It's when we pretend like we don't see them that they continue to be a problem. Address it. If you're brave and you're feeling particularly confident, addressing it directly is also a great thing. be able to just walk up to somebody and say, hey, I saw you sitting on their desk, they seemed a little uncomfortable, it seemed a little too personal, tidy space, you know, maybe you shouldn't do that. If you're in a good space. And hopefully, as we grow and master skills in this area, our environment and our culture will become such that you can say something like that without having to be afraid. But if you are concerned to address it, take it to your supervisor. They will address it. They'll take it to HR. They'll help you. And report it, report it, report it. Can't fix things we don't know about. Acknowledge. One of the biggest struggles that people have with reporting things is they feel like I'm the only one. Or that doesn't bother anybody else. It bothers me, but maybe it doesn't bother everybody else. So sometimes as a bystander, the best thing you can do is go up to that person and say, I saw that, I heard that, I'm sorry that that happened. You should really report that. Just giving them that acknowledgement that they aren't misinterpreting, but that they're not alone will sometimes help people get the courage to go and report things, and that helps your environment overall. Questions about these roles? Okay, so let's talk briefly about what happens when you make a report of harassment, retaliation, discrimination, any of those sorts of things. So the first thing is the complaint. So if you have a complaint or concern, you will be asked, most likely, to write it down or give a statement in writing, and you should do that. Because your team, HR, your leadership team, they will need something in writing to go on because they want to make sure that the story doesn't change over time. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions like, who was there? What time did it happen? What was the scenario? What was going on? What did you say? What did they say? That sort of thing. So they want to get all that stuff down. Then there will be an investigation. Who in your organization investigates? You guys know? I'll tell you who it's not. It's not you. It's not your supervisor. So it'll probably be a membership of your leadership team. It's somebody your organization will designate as the person to investigate. Your HR office will investigate a lot of those sorts of things, but it's not your responsibility to go take statements and find out and look at trending and those sorts of things. Once an investigation is complete, so we're going to interview as your HR team, in my case, I'm going to interview any witnesses, I'm going to interview your supervisors, I'm going to interview people who've been in and out of the department or the area in a while and see what people know about what's going on. And then, I usually meet with the leadership team, we discuss the situation, we'll get your supervisor's input, and then we'll come up with a resolution. So, resolutions look like the worst case scenario, maybe somebody's going to lose their job, maybe somebody's going to get disciplined. Sometimes the resolution is, there wasn't anything there. So, and everything in between, from nothing wrong happened to somebody losing their job. Anything in between can be a resolution. As a person who files a complaint as a victim, you will not be apprised of the resolution. So you shouldn't have that expectation. Your organization will not come back to you and say, well, we found out that they were guilty and we're going to fire them. That's that. They're not going to share that. It wouldn't be appropriate, and you shouldn't want that information anyway. But they will follow up with you. So once the investigation is complete, and please know, sometimes these things take months to get completed. But they will follow up with you. They will let you know the investigation has been completed, a resolution has been determined, appropriate action is being taken. So you'll know that it's been wrapped up, and it didn't just go nowhere, okay? If you're unsure, if you think that it's been on for a long, long time and you've never heard back, talk to your HR, talk to your supervisor. They'll let you know. We're still looking into it, or let you know it's been resolved. Okay, this is the participant part. So, I'm going to go over some scenarios with you, and then we'll test what you've learned. So, I want you to identify the unlawful behavior. Here's the scenario. James works on the road crew, his coworkers found out that he's gay, and now they call him Princess. What's the unlawful behavior? Calling him names. Why is that unlawful? Thank you. Because protected class. They're calling him names because of a protected characteristic. Okay. City employee Gail has dyslexia, which she advised the city of when she was hired. She attended a conference. She had to turn in receipts. She turned in an expense report, including a line item for $81.04 for a lunch that was actually $18.40. Her supervisor rejected it, accused her of trying to defraud her department, and wouldn't let her go to educational conferences. What's up?
88.
88. She has a recognized disability that she disclosed. I'll warn you that this could be unlawful even if it wasn't disclosed, but generally, yep, she has a protected class. So this is discrimination. Okay. Mike, who is male, is an administrative assistant. He works in a common office with 3 other administrative assistants, Sue, Lynn, and Maxine. They are all female. Every Friday, Sue, Lynn, and Maxine go to lunch together. What is it?
They're excluding him.
Yep, they are excluding him. Is it unlawful? It's a trick question. Yes, it is. It's unlawful. I know. I just watch everybody go, what? Why is this unlawful? Let me explain it to you. Because it's a regular meeting that happens at work with just work employees. It's every Friday. Who's not included? Mike. What is different about Mike from the other people who are included? His gender. So he could say, I feel like I'm in a hostile work environment because I'm excluded from the regular Friday luncheon.
Okay, what if those 3 women are married and they don't want a guy around?
Then they shouldn't be having a every Friday luncheon at work.
That's all.
I know, I feel your pain. I truly do. This sort of thing happens all the time. So Mike quits, he's excluded, he's like, these guys go to lunch every Friday, they talk about work-related things, they complain about coworkers, they whatever they do. So we all do at lunch, right?
Solve the world's problems, that's usually what happens.
Solving the world's problems. But he's excluded from that conversation. So then they come back, they got these inside jokes, inside things that are going on, and he's excluded from that.
The
So,
appropriate thing to do there would be to extend the invitation, even if he declines, then
Yep.
that's better than just not including him at all.
it's somewhat better, yes. So you should include everybody. And if you don't want to include everybody, it should be in the context of work. I know. I feel your pain, I feel your struggle. It seems like things you do off the clock should be your own personal business. But when they harm somebody at work, they're not. And this stuff, juries are very sympathetic to this. Very, very sympathetic to this type of thing in a work environment. Okay, another one. New employees working for the maintenance crew. They keep a stock of equipment, oil, other lubricants in the shed out back. Bob, Larry, says he's going to change his truck oil this weekend. His coworker Bob says, help yourself, grab some oil. Right? That, but you know that stuff happens. And so Larry asks his supervisor, like a good employee, he asks his supervisor. Supervisor gets everybody together and explains that you do not take supplies from work for personal use. Everybody gets their behind chewed a little bit. And then Bob goes around after the meeting asking if anybody knows who talked to the boss. What is that? Retaliation. Excellent. It's retaliation. Why is it retaliation? Right? Because he's going around trying to find out who did it, who got him in trouble, which is intimidating. And because telling your boss about the illegal activity is a protected activity. So, even if his intention was not to tattle, even if his intention was just to be like, can I take this oil or that oil? At any rate, the behavior itself of notifying them of the activity is protected. It's a type of whistleblower. Okay, role play. Even more fun. So I'll give you some scenarios, and then you tell me what you would do in each of these as the roles, okay? We'll work our way through it. So, a coworker from another department keeps asking you out on dates and bringing you candy. what would you do if you're the target?
If I was the target, just tell my supervisor. Well, at first I tell the person to stop for us.
Okay, tell them to stop. Perfect. What would that sound like?
That would be like, hey, all the attention really makes me uncomfortable. You know, I would appreciate if you wouldn't do that.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. I like it. It's uncomfortable even saying it out loud here. I can tell. So imagine how much more uncomfortable it is. So let's say that you're the coworker. What would you respond to that?
Okay, sorry for my advances. Didn't mean to be harmful by it.
Stop it. Yeah. Exactly. Now, let's say that you're a bystander in the middle, and you see that situation happen. Yes.
What would I say to the coworker?
Either one.
Just either one.
Free range.
Well, I'd probably go up to the target first
Mhm.
and say, I'm sorry that's happening. Is there anything I can do for you?
Perfect. Acknowledge. Good. Good. Just acknowledge that it happens. Sometimes that is enough that will spur a conversation and get it going in the right direction. Well done. Okay, the delivery person keeps commenting on how sexy you dress and asks if you're sure you're not available. You're the target. What do you say?
I'm sure this is what I have to wear. No, I just respectfully decline and say, yes, I'm sure.
Perfect. Okay. So, if you are the bystander, front row.
Just join something like this where we got into trouble.
Yeah, perfect. And sometimes it's really simple. It's just the normal, decent things that we would say in other situations. So sometimes when I try to figure out what I want to say, I imagine that the target is my daughter. Okay, I might be a little more aggressive in that situation. But if somebody did this to my daughter, what would I do? Would I stand there and be like, no, I'm going to excuse you. We need to chat, right? So, and you would be the same. Like that you should be the same with your coworkers. They should be able to come to work and feel protected and safe and like they can focus on the work. Okay. Your work area is hectic, it's kind of gross, people swear at each other all the time, they call each other names of a variety. That's just kind of the rough and tumble way it is. One of the workers in this department every day comes in and looks up the day's grossest joke and then tells everybody about it. Okay? A lot of people are participating, some people are not. Let's say that you're a person who is not participating. Let's sit in the back. What would you say in that environment?
Hey, I don't know if you guys realize this, but your jokes are kind of crass and they are vulgar, and I don't really appreciate it. Why don't you keep to yourself?
Absolutely perfect. Excellent. Excellent. So.
And then I might jump in the next day and share my own.
And then hopefully one of your coworkers will remind you of the day before.
Just joking. Had to throw in something to lighten the mood.
Right? Harassment and discrimination training is always one where I always feel like everybody comes there and they're like, oh Lord, don't look at me, don't make eye contact with me, please don't point at me, and let's get it over with as fast as possible.
A lot of times I've been in that situation and I would leave. I would walk out the door. I would just excuse myself from the situation.
That is one of the things that you have to watch for to know when people are uncomfortable. It's the behavior is called flee. I'm not comfortable, so I'm just going to cruise on over here and do my job, right? When people are fleeing, they're uncomfortable, and that's something to be aware of. Okay, your boss has suggested, in not so many words, that if you guys were to develop a relationship outside of work, promotions, bonuses, and other benefits would come your way. You are not interested, even if you are. I don't want to go down that path. But this is your supervisor situation. What would you do? How would you address that? Green, teal, sugar.
You know, that's a tough situation, but body language has a lot,
Yep.
you know, in their actions and stuff, and so, you know, same thing, you'd hope maybe somebody step in and interrupt that, or observe that and comment in that type of situation. Not a comfortable deal.
Right? So it's these situations are particularly difficult because you have a position of power requesting a favor. And people in these situations frequently feel like if I don't agree, bad things will happen and I could lose my job, right? I could lose my retirement. I could lose my reputation amongst my peers. All kinds of things can happen, so it has to be addressed. If you are concerned to address this directly with a supervisor, go to HR, go to the mayor, go to your leadership, and let them know what's happening, and they will help you get it handled. But you cannot let that stuff go on. Okay. You survived. So, you guys have any questions? You good? You're all going to go out there and do a fabulous job, knock it out of the park, make sure you're acknowledging people that are being harassed and intervene when you see it going on in your work environment. Perfect. All right. So, if you have questions about things like, how would I tell somebody that I don't like how they're talking to me, feel free to ask me. I'm happy to answer questions and scenarios. If you have situations that deal with your work environment directly, go to your HR team, your leadership team for complaints. I cannot help you with those. If you bring complaints to me, I will give them to them. But that said, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have about the law, harassment, those sorts of things. Feel free to email me, whatever, anytime. They are free to go unless you have anything else.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Make sure you sign in and take some food with you.
Going back to sleep. Well, I'm just saying, this is what I see.
Thanks for coming.
Amen, brother. How's it going?
How are you?
Living the dream. How are you doing?
I'm living the dream as well.
Oh, I took care of the whole situation. I'm going to give you your number.
You're always.
Yes, because
Yeah. Thank you so much.
things are happening.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you.
I seen them coming up and, oh!
I know her, the Harbor Freight.
Yeah.
That is